Good afternoon from the Brain and Performance Center at DP World Company. And we are joined by a very special guest today, Joanne DaCosta Manuel, OBE. Thank you, Joanne, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. So we've heard such good stories about what's happening in your world at the moment. Not originally from the UAE, someone that has trekked halfway across the world to be here. Tell us a little bit about the journey. You came in from the UK, and why the UAE at such a tough time?
Well, it wasn't tough when I arrived back in January, and I thought I needed a little bit of a break from life, and it was the right time to come also to speak to some people on a professional level. And honestly, Craig, I truly believe in my heart that I was led to you, because I remember sitting at home with the computer saying, where am I going to live? And these were just names, right? The Marina, JBR, JLT. And it's almost like I just went there. And so I was looking for somewhere that was close to a metro, because I was really keen to teach my son how to get the metro. And it must have been about 3 or 4 days after arriving here that I was having a little walkabout. And I was like, oh, what's that? Brain and Performance Center. And anything to do with the brain always intrigues me. So I honestly believe I was just led to you. And I spent the evening reading up about you, watching podcasts, listening to interviews that you had done. And the more I was reading, the more I was watching, I was getting a little bit more excited. So what I did next is I set my alarm, because it said that you opened at a certain time. And I was like, I'm going to be there the minute the doors open. But because I was up all night watching you, Craig, I slept through. So when I realized I'd slept through, this was my movie moment, right? I literally stuck on my dress, didn't even brush my teeth. I rushed down here like some desperate mum on a mission. And I got here and I was like, I need to speak to somebody. And that's how I arrived at Brain and Performance Center.
Bit of an interesting story, that's for sure. So you touched on your research and things that you've been looking for. Tell us a little bit about your world back in the UK. Like what transferred you to come to the UAE in the first place? Was it a holiday? Was it for work? Was it for something else? Or why the UAE?
There's a couple of points there, actually, Craig. First, I think I was a little bit fatigued from life. Mm-hmm. So I am a mother first, and I have 2 children, and my youngest son has autism. Mm-hmm. And the life of a parent, and I've learned this over the years, regardless of who you are, where you're from, wealth, status, profession, I feel we're all linked in a certain way because we all feel a certain way. I know when the minute we spoke, I felt that connection with you. And sometimes you can get tired. And I've been on this journey a little while, and I think I was tired from life, and I just needed a little bit of time out and a break. Professionally, I am ambassador to a man called John Caldwell back in the UK. He is a British billionaire philanthropist, businessman, and we have a really big focus on supporting disabled children. 40% of that are children with autism. And obviously, having a son myself, I'm very driven by that. So I meet incredible people that support us on that journey. So it was 2-pronged. And I think, honestly, again, by the grace of God, my son was at a point in life where actually there was a couple of things that needed changing. And I thought, if I'm going, I'm going to take him. And literally, Craig, this was organized in weeks. It wasn't like thought out or planned. It was almost just like this feeling, let's go. And I got the yes and the go ahead, and I landed here.
Yeah.
So
I remember it as if it was yesterday, to be honest. You came in and, you shared the journey, and I didn't give too much away at the outset, but then the more and more you started to share your journey, is the more and more it aligned with what our family had gone through, and where Lizelle and I were in Xander's journey, and how he had developed into a brilliant little man as he continues to grow. So tell us about your experience here at the Brain and Performance Center. You came in, you had a chat, and then clearly you went back and thought about it and discussed it with whoever you needed to discuss it with. What made you say, this place is something that's right for us right now?
Do you know what? I didn't go back and think about it. The minute she started talking, I was like, I need to be here. I'm not sure how, but I need to be here. I've been on this journey for a little while. My son was diagnosed at 2 and he's now 17. And I think for 15 years, Craig, I have consulted with specialists in the UK, in California, in Australia, and I've never really stopped trying to understand. I had questions that weren't answered, and I wanted to understand this the very best I can to continue giving him the best chance in life. And what intrigued me about the Brain and Performance Centre was that when I was reading up, you made it quite clear that you looked after a subgroup of children with autism. Not everybody qualified. And so when I dug a little bit deeper, for me on this journey, I felt like my son was developing normally and then something triggered.
Yeah.
And I was never quite sure what that was. And I spoke to various people. In fact, one doctor did speak to me about what that could possibly be and did some bloods, and it kind of showed me what it was. But everyone else, I sounded like a little bit of maybe a crazy mom, or I was in grief, or I just couldn't handle it. And so that's always just kind of just hanging there a little bit.
Right.
And I think something that they said to me here was, if there's a trigger, we'll find it. And I think what I loved about the Brain and Performance Centre is that you have specialists here, but you aren't so specialised that you're stuck in a box.
Right.
And what I mean by that, Craig, is that when you go out, maybe to a specialist, perhaps with autism, if you say to them, my son has digestive issues, they'll sometimes say, oh, that's the autism. Or he struggles to sleep at night. Oh, that's the autism. And so everything comes down to the diagnosis. But actually, what actually is going on just inside his body, like take that label away, what's going on as a human being. And I think what you do so effectively here is you take people, and it's not like, pie in the sky stuff. It's science and it's black and white evidence.
Right.
So you do. So this testing that you guys have done here, I am just blown away. And I cannot say that enough. And I say that from a place where I have traveled the world. It is so in depth. And I won't forget, and I know that you've had this journey with Xander. I was shaking when I went to see the consultant because she was either going to tell me that what I thought was revealed, or actually I had it wrong all these years. But it wasn't an opinion. I'm looking at my son's brain in an image now, black and white. I'm seeing colors and what they represent. I'm seeing bloods in detail. I'm seeing his gut microbiome. I'm seeing everything in such detail. And I won't forget that moment ever. And I will always be grateful for you, regardless of treatment continued at that point. What that assessment did, revealed and showed me. I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a crybaby.
More than okay.
That was so powerful. And I work with a lot of families, but there is a whole group of parents that sometimes feel that maybe there could have been something that might have triggered it, and there could be various things that could be.
Sure.
And you're often told or made to feel like you're a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
And so honestly, the rigorous assessments that you do here and the way that you hold our hand and talk us through those results is like nothing I've ever experienced. And I will always be grateful for that.
Joanne, I hear you, and I see the emotion and the reality in how it feels for you. And it's reliving my experience. My wife and I came in here similarly to you to understand what was happening in Xander's world. And that level of detail in that 3-day assessment at the beginning, where you get such a deep picture, not only of the brain, but of the body, of the physical performance, of the neuropsychology, of the gut health and the dietetics. It's really something that we didn't find anywhere else. Like, we've had a really amazing life and was blessed in our prior journey where I worked for one of the top healthcare institutions in the world. and they weren't able to tell us this about our son. So when we sat with our lead physician here and went over the results of that assessment, as you say, it brings things really into perspective, because it's a level of detail that you don't get anywhere else. Yeah. So coming back to that meeting, you had the meeting, you took it in, and you had a choice. You were either the crazy mum, which is never the fun place to be, but it exists, or you can be the mum that embraces the results and gets on and does something about it. So I know from watching your journey with your son what happened next, but tell us and tell the people listening, what steps did you take next? Like, was it acceptance? Was it understanding? Was it fix it? What do I do to get involved? Like, what happened next after that meeting with the physician where you get the full picture of where your son actually is?
I took a day. In fact, I think we had exchanged some text messages, and I didn't write as much as I could because I think I was just in a little place of just letting things sink in and just understanding what had been explained to me. And then I think, as always, I woke up the next day, rolled my shoulders back and was like, right, let's crack on. What do we do next? And we were just taken care of exceptionally here, that I knew whatever was coming next was going to continue in that vein. And so I had so much trust. In fact, today we had, some of the assessments and things are now starting to wrap up, and I'm getting very tearful because you become our family for like 3 months.
Yeah.
And even though I'm sitting there on my laptop and he's doing his thing, you watch people come in, you watch people come out. And I think that's the beauty of why I have absolutely fallen in love with this place, is because I sit there quietly doing my work, but I'm obviously listening and I'm hearing and I'm seeing things that go on. And it's not as though it's an act.
Yeah.
And then you go back to normal. And then the way that you treat every single person that walks through this door is incredible. I'll tell you something else that really stands out to me is, I don't know if you feel this, Craig, and I know every parent has a very different stance on this, okay? But for me, when I describe my son, or I have in the past, I have said his name, and then along the line, I would say with autism. And I've met a lot of people that label it straight away. I'll give you an example. This might not be a very good example. It's like if someone was going to describe me and said, Joanne, the brown lady, okay, I'd probably think, hang on, sorry, like Joanne, has a huge faith, loves to dance, works in charity. Maybe if it's appropriate, you could say woman of color. And you get an image. But if you just said that to start with, and I just find that a lot of times it's like, here's John and he is autistic. And it's like, no, hang on, no, that's not. That's part of him. It's not the whole of him.
Right.
And so that's my opinion. And the other thing is that they talk to me all the time. And as my son's got older, it's like, am I invisible? Every single member of staff here, Craig, ignores me. When we walk through the door, they greet him first. They ask him how his day is, what he's got next, and then they maybe look to me if they need. That is unique. If everyone in the world could be like that, our children would grow up stronger, more confident individuals, because they will feel seen and they will feel heard. And I haven't said this to you yet, and I don't know if anyone's ever said that to you before about the staff here, but that is very, very special.
Thank you.
Very special.
I think, like, I will pause here for a second and share a little bit about community. Like, for us, we always keep the client or the patient at the center of the journey, and that's really important for us. And you acknowledge that, and you felt that, which is great. But also one thing that's really important is that sense of community around the parents, the carers, the nanny, the dog down the street, the cat across the road, things like this. When someone's here for a 3-month program, you can't but become a part of their life. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's a big focus for us, because when you have a client or a patient that is going through a program, and it's an extensive program with the 3 days of assessment, then the 12 weeks of treatment, then again the 3 days of assessment at the tail where you compare the difference. You're there for quite a bit of time. You get to learn the individual. You get to learn their family network, their group. What do they do? What school do they go to? What does their family circle look like? What does the sister, the brother, the auntie, and the uncle look like? And that's something that we really pride ourselves on here at the Brain and Performance Center, because that's part of the journey. You know, it's not just come and have a transactional healthcare experience with us, because that's not who we are. You know, a lot of our focus is bringing the DNA from the hospitality industry into the healthcare industry. And there's so much health business in the world, and there's not enough healthcare. And that, to me, is really at the core of what we do. So you've said that your son has gone through the initial assessment, now is at the tail of the program where the conclusion or the wrap up of the other 3 days of assessment are happening. Now you're about to get some quantifiable results. You've seen, and I know this through conversations with you, that you've seen change in him as a person and as a little man that he's not anymore. You know, a 17-year-old man that is entering into the world.
Yeah.
You're going to get your results and the validation to say, okay, he's seen steps here that you've felt and you can see in real life, but the actual data, he's progressed here by this much, here by this much, here by this much. This is a real validation of how you've been feeling for 17 years of your life, or if you said it was diagnosed at 2, 15 years of your life.
Yep.
How does that make you feel? Like you're not only seeing change in him, but you're about to feel some huge change yourself.
Yeah. I'm not sure. There's one test in particular that I'm quite keen to have a look at. You do offer, though, like bite-sized consultations throughout. So every 2 weeks, I've been sitting down with the psychologist. I've been looking at the results of what he's been doing, his training. I jumped in the lift with one of them yesterday. They must have been like, I was like, can you tell me what happened
What's
here?
coming?
Yeah. How did he, what does this mean? So I feel like you've kept me up to date with a lot of things as we've gone along. You know,
Right.
he has the dietitian twice a week, the psychologist, the nurse, the consultant. So we're always keeping on track with how things are going.
Sure.
And I think everybody was really open and honest at the start and said, you know, there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows. There's going to be days where he's very tired. There's going to be days where he has a lot of energy. He's going to have a huge appetite. He's going to go off his food. And I think I've experienced all of that.
Right.
But you told me that's what you're going to experience. And I think whatever results I see, I've witnessed for myself. I was saying to my husband the other day on the phone, I said, I feel like when he walked in, he was a boy, and I feel like he's leaving. I feel like he's leaving like a young man.
Yeah.
Because I have seen him progress
Yep.
in the last 12 weeks. And I've seen myself progress. And I'm really big with the work I do back home to advocate for siblings, for mothers, for fathers. Like, we're all in this together.
Right.
And like you said earlier, and I really have to give you credit, Craig, because I think you have the company culture often streams from the top. And there is just so much care here for every individual. You know, you've been really open. You've opened your arms to me as well, where I have received counselling every week. where I've needed a little bit of support. They've seen me crying when the war started. I was like, I just want to go home, but I can't leave the brain center. Or in days where I've struggled, I've missed my daughter so much. My husband's like, please, I just, when are you guys coming home? There's been a lot that's happened here, and you guys have held my hand extensively. Just today, I was speaking to the dietitian, and she'd kind of finished with Cruzy, and I was like, can you just help me? And she's like, right, just pop on this. Let's have a look at what your body's saying. So you've taken care of me as well.
I think one thing that's really important here is that you're amplifying what we try and achieve every day.
Yep.
Which is, yes, we keep the patient or the client at the center. The family unit around that patient, around that client, is sometimes more important and need the help just as much. If I cast my mind back and think, how were things in our family when the diagnosis for Xander came in? At the end of the day, it didn't affect him. He was still being himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it throws us, and it threw Lizelle and I off balance a little bit, for sure. And it took me as a father a while to accept it.
Mm.
But I can say that, we're in a place now where, there's challenges, but we all have good days and bad days, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you have a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder doesn't make you any different to anyone else. Doesn't make you less than. Doesn't make you, someone that sits in a box and is only treated this way. You're a person.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you be a young man, a young woman, an older adult, it doesn't matter. And I think that's a great segue to ask you questions about, how do you feel as your son has become older? Has his symptoms, or as his unique traits, have they become more amplified or less amplified during hormonal changes that young men have, or maybe young women have? I know you can't speak to that, but how have you seen this change, or it really hasn't that much?
Oh, it definitely has. And I'll always advocate early intervention. I think that is crucial. And I think without Cruzy receiving the support he did right at the beginning, he certainly wouldn't have made the gains that he'd made to this point.
Sure.
He was always my little baby, right? And he was just, I could communicate with him,
right,
in a way which was very much mother's son, and you're like my little baby. And then suddenly he's not a little baby, like his voice is changing, and he's growing a beard, and mum, like,
back off
you're
a little
not
bit.
The girlfriend, like, what you put your hand around me, and I'm feeling all awkward. And then questions sink in about, I guess he has moments where he probably looks in the mirror and thinks, okay, who am I? And what is this? And he's now trying to make sense of things. And that then opens up a whole new world of things. And I think having transitioned that, and I know a lot of parents go through this as well, you realize that this is a marathon and it's not a sprint.
Yeah.
And that this phase will continue, and then a new one will.
Yep.
And they're always going to keep evolving, like you said earlier, like we all do, right? Yeah. I have a typical developing daughter, and I have watched her phases change.
Right.
But I do think you have to really look out on mental health, particularly as they start growing and there's hormonal changes, because I think questions can start to arise.
Yeah.
And that can open up perhaps other anxieties.
Right. So you speak about anxieties, which is, leading somewhere where, especially in this part of the world, it exists a lot more prevalently than many other places. But talk to me about masking, right? So if you think about your son kind of deflecting symptoms, or your family unit deflecting symptoms, it's a lot of pressure involved, right? You understand, but you try and, not you, but in general, people try and suppress, or they deflect, or they become naive and don't do what they really would in a typical sense. Do you feel that in your personal and professional capacity that you've run into people that can become depressed or have anxiety or have levels of denial potentially that really haven't dealt with the diagnosis and things surrounding the diagnosis? And like you said before, when you were here and having your son experience the program, the team here recognized and reached out and offered support to support you as well. Tell us about how that can become challenging, but how important it is to deal with it along the way.
Yeah. Again, I think there's a couple of things from this, Craig. I remember when Creasy was diagnosed, one of the first things, and this is 15 years ago, and it was in another country, they said 88% of marriages end because of the pressure. And mums and dads can often take the diagnosis very differently, and they're on different timelines. And there's an immense pressure. And unless you're another mother or father, you don't really get it.
Right.
And I think as soon as you meet someone, they understand where that pressure might come from.
Yeah.
And what I would say, I'm going to say this bit to camera, hold hands and don't let go, because you find your way back to each other, but it's hard.
Yeah.
And siblings are often the unsung heroes in life. And they go through a lot as well. And people don't understand that families, bigger extended families sometimes, they just need a little bit extra care, TLC, understanding, because they're living under a roof where things happen and behaviors might erupt, and they just have to get on with it. They didn't perhaps ask for it. I do think, though, they shape some of the most incredible young people that turn into adults. And I'd say the same for parents. The parents that I have met, when you're on a journey like this, it opens up a level of empathy that you might have never had. Even if I was always very empathetic, but I now see life through a completely different lens. And I do think in some ways it's a gift, because you care and you love on a different level when you have a beautiful child that presents with the journeys we've been on.
Right.
And when I love to talk.
It's fine. I agree with you. And like on reflection, I think about what life's like in our world. And I've had days when I've been, by my own admission, a really tough father. And I've not done what's in the best interests of my son. Because I didn't understand. I didn't accept. And I'd not taken the time to see it from his perspective. And sometimes it takes the most refreshing slap to the face by a 2-year-old sibling of his that says, you know what? That's not okay. And in our family unit, I have a 10-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old daughter, and they are the biggest advocates for Xander. Like, when you say that the family unit is so important, you know, I look at Zola and I look at Zuri, and they're his protectors. Protectors of the world. You know what I mean? Like, I know Lizelle and I will not tolerate, and have not in so many circumstances, people who make Xander feel less than or treat him like he is less than. But I can see the advocacy journey in Zola and Zuri, and it is really, really, as you say, the unsung heroes of the process. It creates weight, creates pressure.
Absolutely.
And I think that when you sit back and think, well, you know, how can I provide my family unit to be the best versions of themselves? We'll find a way. As you say, as parents that experience the world in this way. We do hold hands, we do move on, and we will find ways together. But without that unity, you start to feel like this pressure is too much. And what I can say is I 100% agree with you. If you don't have that rock, that support by your side, you will forever feel that weight.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be too much to handle. So let's lighten it up a little bit.
Let's go.
So talk to us about language. And when I mean language, I don't mean verbal or non-verbal. I mean things like you touched on before, where people can say, oh, well, he has a limitation, or he can't do that, or yeah, but because he has this, he can't do that. As a parent, I know how it makes me feel. Talk to me about when maybe an instance of that has happened in your world and how you reacted to it.
Oh, Craig, that question. Oh, it's happened a lot. You might not want to take him in the room because I know they don't like loud noises. Like, okay, he has no issues with noises, but okay. Or, in fact, I'm going to say another bit to camera. So, only 1% of people with an autism diagnosis have a very, very special gift. And do not ask a parent the minute you meet them what your child's special gift is, because often they don't have one. It's such a small, and so they're like, oh, does he do the piano, or is he brilliant? And you think they're making you feel worse because then you're like, on top of this, he doesn't have a special gift. So I think I don't know if you've ever had that, but I get asked all the time, oh, what's his special thing? And I'm just like, they watch Rain Man or something, and then they just all think he must be brilliant with numbers. And so just don't stereotype. Like I said earlier, Craig, just look at them as a person and for all the beautiful things that they bring to the world, which they do. I sit there, and I know you'll do this with Xander. I sit there and look at him, and I just think, you're such a blessing. You're such a blessing in so many ways. The way that you approach life, the way that you approach people, some of that vulnerability is beautiful to watch, because humanity isn't like that. And so they come with so many gifts. And I'm not talking about talents. I'm just talking about gifts in what they teach the world.
Yeah.
And that is definitely one of my bugbears. Just don't assume. Assume, because every single person, all of us, you and I, Craig, we're all made up so differently.
Yeah.
None of us are exactly the same. So let's treat them as the individuals that they deserve to be treated as.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And the diagnosis is autism spectrum disorder.
Yeah.
Spectrum. Here to here. You could be at this end, you could be at this end, and you can be at any increment along the way, right? So when you sit back and think, you know what? No, he's not in a bucket. He's not there. He's not having this label. I go into like super protector mode. And it can be ugly. It can be really ugly. I was telling the team the other day about an incident. And I'll say it was an incident because I made it an incident. Now, we were at a pool at a hotel in Abu Dhabi.
Right.
And Xander loves the water. Like, it's his thing. So we went and we were chillaxing, and he was doing his thing, and he can swim very well. 8-year-old, swims better than most adults. Like, that's his thing. And he was jumping from outside the pool to inside the pool. And he did it like 100 times in half an hour. Okay, maybe an exaggeration, but he did it a lot. Let's put it that way. And the lifeguard looks up at me and says, "What's wrong with him?"
No.
Let me tell you. What happened next? I wasn't particularly proud of. And it's not something that I will sit back and think as my proudest moment. But what I will say is that person, that lifeguard, who's not educated with people with an autism spectrum diagnosis in their skill set.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't answer the question as politically correct as I did just then, but I can say that I wasn't proud. So to that lifeguard, I'm sorry. It wasn't an impressive display of my understanding nature. Let's put it that way. But I can say this. The world is like that.
Mm.
It's rough.
Mm.
And as we grow and as our children grow in this world, it's a tough place.
Mm.
And some people don't get it. Now, in the UAE, there is becoming a culture of acceptance and inclusion. And that goes through a variety of different spaces, from airline infrastructure, airports, schooling, public spaces, malls, transportation, things like this. Tell us about what's happening in the UK. Is there places like this to support individuals and families? Is there a focus of the government or philanthropists or specific fields of society that are opening their doors to support? Or is this an evolving space or not really something that's happening at the moment?
I think worldwide, Craig, the trajectory of autism diagnosis is going through the roof.
Yeah.
And I think worldwide, it's hard to deal with the numbers. And there are very, very long waiting lists.
Yeah.
So when you look at the government, I guess we'll just ballpark that one there. I'm very, very proud to represent John Caldwell and the work we do at the charity Caldwell Children, because there's such a focus on children with autism and early intervention. You come to our center and you can get diagnosed within days with all the right people in-house. So it's a little bit of a one-stop shop with regards to getting a diagnosis and then some support. And with regards to what you do here, like I said, I do feel like I was guided here. And so let's see if there's a way maybe in the future that we can also collaborate.
Right.
Because I do believe that it is mothers on missions, fathers on missions, philanthropists, that create what happens next.
Yeah.
You can't rely on the government alone. They're not coping very well at all.
Right.
There is definitely an increase from when I started around awareness, around inclusion. It's funny because when you were talking earlier about like your family and the children, and I was talking about my beautiful daughter, you naturally learn about inclusiveness, right? It just becomes part of us. We have to give the general public a little bit of breathing space because they haven't had that. They're having to learn what inclusiveness is, not by experiencing it, but maybe trying to understand it. So I think there's definitely a growth in setting up things that are more inclusive. But I still think it's going to take a long time before it's ever going to be something that people naturally do.
Yeah. So you spoke about inclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
So let's think about what that really looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So in your world,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about your experience in the UK, your experience in other countries, as you've said, your experience here. If you had a crystal ball or a magic wand or something that you could design for the future, what would true inclusion really look like for you? What do you need in your world?
This question. Okay, the first thing that came to my mind was right. So if we invented, if you can sort this out, Craig.
Right, sure. This afternoon I'll get it sorted. Yeah.
If we invented some AI glasses,
Okay.
right, that we all put on and we walk around and we just see individuals, as I explained earlier, who they are, and you see all the good bits, and you just don't see whether they're needing a wheelchair, or whether they have special needs, or whether they're a different color, or they have a change in gender, where we actually see everyone as equal. How wonderful would that be?
Yeah.
Because first, it's all about what we see, right? And the minute we've seen that, we then make our judgment.
Yep.
So that's what I'd like you to arrange.
Sure.
What about you?
So I want to tell you a story.
Oh, yeah. Come on then.
And it's very personal, and it's very close to Lizelle and my heart.
Mm-hmm.
We had a conversation with someone recently that we were told Xander can't progress because he can't speak yet. Now, you know, and I know because I've told you this, Xander's in a pre-verbal space. He came in a diagnosis where he was unable to speak at all. He went through the program here, and you know, it was a journey where at the start, we didn't think it was going to be successful. But at session 23, he broke through, and things have started to progress. And ever since, it's been a really amazing journey. But getting to the story at hand, this person that worked for a company that is, let's say, a close part of what we are hoping to achieve for Xander, limited him.
Okay.
And I don't like to put limits on anything.
Right.
On people with labels or perceived labels, or whether it be the gardener, the driver, the CEO, the dog down the street and the cat across the road. As I said before, you know, labels are only important to people who think they're important.
Yeah.
But in my world, they're not. But in my son's world, this person thought, I'm going to stick a label, I'm going to stick a limitation. And what happened next was my wife went into protector mode and explained to this person in the most professionally courteous way that if you had a child that had broken their leg, however, fallen off their bike or fallen out of a tree, didn't matter, and was in a wheelchair, and that was their journey for the next 6 to 8 weeks. And they were required to do physical education at school. And you turned around and said, no, I'm not letting them progress with their entire learning journey because they have a broken leg. If you think about that, it doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense, right? Like, you sit back and think, if there's something wrong, you can't limit them from doing anything else. This is one thing. Now, whilst there's a label, if you didn't know the label existed, then realistically, we wouldn't be having the conversation in the first place. So for me, I would love a world, coming back to your original question, I know it took a while to get there.
I love it.
But what would be important to me? A world where labels didn't exist. Now, some people require the diagnosis or the label because it helps them get funding or get support or get care teams to get together. And that's okay. I respect that. But I'd like a world, and this is in my fictitious fairy dreams that I think about at night, I'd like a world where people didn't label people with autism as autistic.
Yeah.
He has autism, or she has autism.
Well, I need to give you a high five at this point. I love that.
Because that to me is that's where things go wrong. Now, you know, I sit back and I think to myself, my role as Xander's father is to give him the opportunity to be the best version of himself.
Yeah.
And to help him be independent and to help him navigate this world that exists in the best way possible. So, as a mother of a child who has a diagnosis and has done everything she can possibly do to be supportive, to be flying the flag, to be the advocate and the person to look up to for your son, is there anything you look back on and think, you know what? I should have done that differently. Or I wished I'd done something more like this. Or if I could have done this earlier. Like, we all struggle with what ifs, right? And that what if haunts me, and I know it haunts Lizelle, but are there any things that you keep way, way, way at the back that you think, you know what, if I'd done this earlier, things might have been different? Or not really?
I think I moved very quick, and this became a very big mission. But I think I lost some things along the way. I think I lost myself. I didn't take care of myself at all. And, you know, it comes back to that whole scenario about the aeroplane and the mask and putting it on yourself first. And it's very easy to say, but when you're actually trying to get answers, early intervention, put things in place from the minute they wake to the minute they go to sleep, you're on it.
Yeah.
It's hard. And I think, again, the things I said earlier, like the marriages and, you know, just keep a closer eye on things because you can't be tunnel vision. And I need to be here for both my children for a long, long time. And if I'm just on constant sprint, fight or flight, then I probably won't survive or wouldn't have survived much longer. So I think if I could have done anything differently, it would have been to just create pockets of time for my own mental health, my own physical health, to show up even better. I think that would be my...
I don't disagree with that. We have this catchphrase and we get tarnished for it in our circle. But that phrase is, you can't drink from an empty cup. Now, my wife and I do things together that help fill that cup up on a regular basis, whether it be we travel or we do this or we do that. And it's not to not be with the kids. And that can be just a dinner in another Emirates. It can be something else that we take care of for ourselves. You know, as much as it pains her to say this, go to the golf driving range because she hates it. But to be somewhere to be able to recharge that battery, because that's a really, really important thing. And I know that I struggle with, if the battery's empty or the cup is empty, I can't be the best version of me, not only for Xander, but for Zuri and Zola as well. And like, I feel that when that cup is done, like, it's a stress because I'm not the best person that I want to be. So I feel you when you say, you know what, taking care of yourself is very important. And it can come across selfish, but it is also so very important to be that person who is recharged, because the pressures that are on a family unit to deal with diagnoses like this is tough. And I don't, as you don't, we don't look at this from a lens. We look at this from real life. And that is something that is sometimes pressures that are hard to take. So I always end a discussion with a question. And this is something I know you've spoken direct to camera a few times. This is something I'd like you to speak direct to camera about.
Oh, okay.
It's about advice. So if you were going to give advice to someone out there who's at the start of the journey right now, who is maybe not sure if they should go and get a diagnosis or see a professional or come to a center like the Brain and Performance Center or a different center in any other country that they live in right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, well, maybe my child has something, but I'm not sure. Or talk to your younger self. What would you give them as a couple of key takeaways? Because when I was starting out, I needed to hear from someone
Mm-hmm.
to give me the confidence to move on.
Mm-hmm.
So tell our listeners, what would you do?
I think there's a real power in parental instinct. And if you feel like something doesn't feel quite right, I cannot emphasize enough the power of early intervention and how crucial time is. And that's not to say that you can't have support as years go on, but the early years are really important. And so the minute that you feel anything, make sure that you are moving on that quickly. The power of this beautiful thing that we've all been gifted called the brain has an amazing ability to create new neural pathways to heal. And coming to, no matter where you are in the world, I obviously advocate for the work we do back in the UK. Here in the UAE, I've been blown away by the Brain Center, and actually, we've discussed it earlier, how they really look at the individual's brain and get the help that you need quickly. Drown out the noise. Sometimes there's a lot of cultural pressure. There's lots of things that can play a part. Just drown out the noise and just focus on your child and move quickly. And that would be my advice. And actually, I just want to say a couple of things, if you don't mind.
No, of course.
I haven't said enough, but when you were talking about labels, I was just like, oh, because in the UK, they brought out this brand and it was labels are for clothes, not for people. And I think that always just rings in my mind. And I think the type of world we live in now, Craig, we're addicted to our phones, right? We're all in our phones. And then even, especially here in Dubai, everybody's in their fancy cars. And I always talk to people about, if you go back in time and you look at people like Alexander Bell, who invented the telephone, or you look at Tesla, or you look at Einstein. I mean, I came out here in your fancy cinemas and watched the new Michael Jackson movie, and they're talking about these traits of autism. Yeah. Some of the greats that have shaped the world that we live in today had those traits. And so you cannot live the life that we live now and have access to some of the incredible things that we have without those incredible brains.
Sure.
So the next time that you want to understand why a child is jumping in and out of a pool, you need to understand it better, because the world we live in and the gifts that we've been gifted have been shaped by these people.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that. And the other thing was, when I go back, Craig, and I look back on this journey, I think the thing that will stand out for me will be one word, and one word that I will always, always be grateful for. And that word is yes. So when I approached John Caldwell, who I work for, and said, I'd like to come to Dubai, he said yes. Yeah. When I turned up here and needed to speak to somebody straight away, having not brushed my teeth, she said, yes, I'll find someone for you to speak to straight away. When I came and sat with you, you said yes. I have a friend that I went to for some support and to get some advice. They said yes. The man above, who guides every step that I make, brought me here. And to my son, to my husband and my daughter, when I said, we can't come back, I have found something incredible. I need your okay. They said yes. And to my son, we're in a new country, new smells, new sounds, new tastes. He doesn't know anyone. And he turned up here every single day and he said yes to every single thing. And I will forever be grateful to every single person that said yes. So thank you, Craig.
Pleasure. Joanne, thank you so much for embarking on this journey, not only to discuss this with us here today, but to embark on this journey for your son and for your family. and for others that really, truly need care. So once again, Joanne, thanks for joining us today at the Brain and Performance Center. And I wish you all the best on the journey and safe travels back home.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Craig.
Pleasure.